I urge in corporate organizations, even in terms of security, that is it a worthwhile return on investment? Am I getting my return on investment? And how do you, in tangible terms, define return on investment in security? I mean, you can have a return on investment in so many other things, and you can give graphs and all that. It's the kind of thing that, I was saying on television last night, that, Kashmiris for long have blamed the Indian Army for 60,000 lives that have been lost in Kashmir. I don't accept the figure. They're probably adding all the lives that have been lost anyway in Kashmir with or without the army. But the fact is, with the army now, it's rescuing 60,000 and perhaps even more as the days go. In a way, it's a kind of return on investment in the army by the government of India that, you have had a body readily available. If we had a disorganized force, you wouldn't have been able to react in a situation where the civilian government in Kashmir is completely out of its depth. They don't really know where to begin or end. So how do you see in your organization, is there a debate on that? Or they say, this is the amount that's allocated, and it's for you guys now to do what you want with it?
Well,
are the mics available? Please identify yourself.
hello, good afternoon. My name is Rajiv and I am from Crown Plaza, Mayur Vihar. Sorry?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rajiv, and I'm from Crown Plaza, Mayur Vihar. I'm in the hotel industry. And as Mr. Raza had said, that how much you give, then only you will get the returns. The only meeting which our CEOs and MDs they do with us is, and they ask us only one question: how you are going to reduce the manpower? And with reducing this manpower, we think that we will be able to have a proper security system in the hotel industry. So I don't think that if we can just agree to that point that yes, always reducing the manpower and the security system will be 100% foolproof. It cannot be. And the infrastructure, the modern technologies, if we are not having that, we cannot be in the international market, because being in the international chain, definitely you should be able to cope with the international market also, the standards which people are following abroad. But in India, it is not like that. Security is still being looked as if this is a money-eating service.
So, on a lighter note, you expect an attack every few years to make your relevance more important. I mean, harmless attacks, just a bomb blast here and there, so it will put the fear of God in your CEOs. Can we have another view, please?
Yeah, I think I'm Steve Khurana, I'm Hero Protocol. It's about, once bitten, twice shy. So, in the corporates who have been bitten, I think they have understood the importance of security. And like a couple of very important points that you made were that if you are giving peanuts, you get monkey. Rajiv gave a point of technology and how to leverage good technology. If you are going to throw peanuts, do you think that monkey who's there will be able to give you the return for technology that you are employing? No. So there is a lot of disconnect between the perceived value of security and what is actually required. The point you made was that it's about the nation, the way they take Indian Army. What's the ROI? So similarly here what happens is, till the chips are down, okay, security wala hai, he's a man at the gate. But when there is a disaster, security will block. When there is a fire, security will block. When there is a traffic jam, security will block. When there is a IR situation, security will control karenge. So today, security cannot be looked as one man standing at the gate and controlling access, Ram Ram Saab and a nice salute and that's it. Today, the security has to be seen in a very different way, seen as a business partner, in which every security man has to be trained and he has to be multi-skilled. We need to look at competencies beyond just the soldier-like competencies, wherein he has to have people skills, he has to have good communication, he has to be able to understand, he has to have the business acumen as to what is affecting my business. When we are talking of corporate security, it has to mesh with the ultimate aim of the corporate, the ultimate aim of business, that is customer satisfaction and needs. How is he, the task that he is doing, how is he motivated and how is he performing and ultimately affecting the major vision and mission and ultimate aim of the company. He has to understand that. Unless he understands that my task, what I am doing today over here is important and how I am maintaining the brand value of the company, that is still missing. It is still missing. The first person you come across when you go to an organization is who? The security man. So, I mean, for people who are married and went for arranged marriage, what was the first thing you saw? The face. That's it. It had an impact on you. It had an impact on your decision. It had an impact on your perception, and a lot of other things, your decision making. So, I think security has to have a big flip. I think somebody probably this point had come up that the CEOs must attend functions like this to be able to understand the importance of security and how they are going to be strategic business partners in the organization.
Tell me, I'd like to ask the two gentlemen here, Shakil and sitting next to you, that there's this whole talk about getting technology in to upgrade your level of security, but there are 2-3 elements that go with technology. One is, technology is no good unless it's implemented and built into your security architecture. You can't have piecemeal technology. You can't just have CCTVs and think, you've sorted out all of life's problems. There's this whole obsession with CCTV which I find a bit of a bloody laugh. Because the point is, CCTV only gives you after action report. So you can put it together after you've been blown up, then go to the heavens and watch CCTV footage and say, what do you do before that? So how does technology help you beforehand? That's one. The second aspect is, do you feel there is a need for layers of capability? So there is that technically qualified guy, I talk from military experience, that there is the infantryman like me who was known as PBI, which is poor bloody infantry, right? But today that's the guy going all over Srinagar and elsewhere and pulling out most of the people. But then there are more technologically superior arms, the armor and the artillery, who, I don't want to quote what they say about themselves, but basically they are the king and queen of battle in a way. But queen of battle is infantry, but artillery and armor always have the argument who has more impact on the battlefield. But then you have the technical service in the armed forces, that those people are really padha likha. So, he wouldn't talk to an infantry jawan too closely because he says the guy is unpad, So there is that superiority element. Now, in your security architecture, do you have any of you thought of in terms of not just having technology but suitably qualified people at various levels? Because one of the problems I noticed, for example, with the CCTVs in Pune when the cycle blast took place, that there were CCTVs, out of 160 or 270 CCTVs, 69 were installed, I'm told, and not even 10 of them were being actually studied. So there's no point having CCTV, and a lot of people think that you have a camera looking kind of thing once in a while going up and down and you deter the chap way somebody's taking my photograph. We've done the damage, put the cycle, gone away, and the rest is for us to see as history. So how do you mishmash and how do you bring it all together in a cost-effective way, as he said, because for them, at the end of the day, is the bottom line is the cost. And a lot of people think that, it's so how would both of you like to take it on?
Yes, sir. I think I should tell people that typically, Mr. Shivkumar is also here, he'll correct me. Per crores of investment in a healthcare setting, if I'm not wrong, 20% of ROI is expected. So just think want to have a system, let's say a high definition camera or a CCTV surveillance system which records video in high definition, stores it for a XYZ amount of days, how much it is going to cost you? And people say, okay, bomb phutega to dekhenge. Yes, true. In the last 5 years, see the amount of incidents that have happened in the hospitals and how many corporate hospitals have been hit. Then you get the answer yourself. Yes, we are Apollo, groups like Apollo, Max, Optus. They have been able to build the security system in this layered approach, wherein you have layers. Checking of patients, their guests, their attendant is above. Nobody, anybody coming to this hotel would gladly subject himself or herself to security checks. But same gentleman or the lady visits one of these hospitals, and if he or she is subjected to security check, there will be violent reaction. Trust me. When Shivakumar is here, and he'll agree with me, there is a Herculean task. So, the promoters of the company and those who have designed the security system, they want us to be non-intrusive in nature. And there comes this layered structure. So indeed it is there. Only thing is, sometimes it is visible to people, sometimes it is not visible.
No, I can suggest a technology that I saw at Canary Wharf. What they used to do is, on the ground floor of Canary Wharf, most of the buildings are huge malls. First floor, second floor upwards are offices and restaurants. So what Richard and his team did, he had highly trained people with big screens about the size of this, constantly in shifts sitting in front of it, because after some time, keep looking at the screen, you begin to get hallucinations. So it's best to keep shifting people out. In shifts, they used to see a whole lot of people walking up and down the mall, anybody having anything metallic on their body, without actually giving away, particularly in the case of the lady, her modesty away, those parts of the body, when some metallic weapon or something was kept, the body would be seen as blue, but the metallic thing would show in as red. And they'd have people standing at various corners where the mall takes a turn or whatever, and they just ring up that person on the walkie-talkie and say, there's a lady coming towards you, she's in a pair of jeans with a bag on her shoulder, just stop her and then have a check. So you can actually apply technology without being too obtrusive. But the issue is a hospital is different, a hotel is different, and I think because we've been hit in hotels, we've all developed the psychology to say, bhai, we are going into a mob, so we are going to have a check. Right? But hospital still seems to be far outside the agenda of the terrorists, and I say, God forbid, till the next big hospital gets hit. And then you'll see how people will happily have themselves frisked. In fact, I'm told in the United States, after 9/11, today is 9/11 by the way, after 9/11, people actually go through a very detailed check at airports and public places as a ritual of faith to your country's national security. That the more you're frisked, the more you feel you're contributing to national security. That's the culture, that's the obsessive culture that's set in. But Shakti, can you have your views?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Shakil. I represent Pfizer. I head global security for Pfizer for South Asia. And just to start, my view, I got this quote after a lot of search. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And that goes very well for security as far as I'm concerned. After 7 years in the army, I spent 5 years in the reserve banks, in Vedanta, TCS, Citigroup Global, and now with Pfizer for the last 4 years. So various sectors, different challenges, cross-industry experience. I can tell you frankly from my experience that within Pfizer right now, I see the best mix. We have intelligence guys, ex-intelligence guys doing our intelligence team for each region that we have divided it into. We have brand protection teams. Global security actually takes care of anti-counterfeiting as well. So I'm probably one of the guys who can actually give an ROI to what I do. In terms of millions of Viagra, counterfeit Viagra confiscated, which adds to the sales figures actually, because our sales team can then push forward into that region and make the genuine sales. So the raids that are conducted, the syrups, the Corex cough syrups that I confiscate, we've had 20 seizures in the last 3 months across India. So lakhs of rupees, this ROI I can definitely do, but I was not fortunate enough in my previous organizations to do the same thing. I was also reading, sir, that today's company's valuation, in 1982 perhaps it was 20%. The intangibles on your balance sheet were 20% of the company value. They've reached 85% now. Intangibles actually account for 85% of the company value. Why don't we think of security as an intangible value? All I have to do is to prove this, which is very difficult, leave my head office in Jogeshwari, West in Mumbai, and remove all the security guards and the CCTV and the access control just for 2 days. And you would see the value of security then. There would be nothing remaining in that office. So that is the value of security one needs to understand. And like you said, 9/11 and 26/11 took place, and post that there was hysteria, and we got a seat at the table, which is the fight with most of us security professionals. We want a seat at the table, we don't get it most of the time. Post these incidents, we are actually invited, given a red carpet, do whatever you can, and then there's knee-jerk reaction, and we go into technology, which we hardly use. I mean, that's my view as far as CCTV you mentioned, sir. Absolutely, we don't even use 20% of the entire technology. In Pfizer, we have a forensics team based in one of the regions who come in, mirror your laptop if there's a fraud investigation going on. They would get remotely into your system. We have technical guys. What you were saying, layering of security and the personnel accordingly, we need to identify and recruit. So we have forensics guys in the team, we have brand protection experts in the team, we have intelligence experts in the team, and we have physical security experts in the team who do the gap audits for our plants and the offices. So this is how we take care, and fortunately Pfizer is very well organized in terms of security and pretty heavily loaded as well in terms of manpower. We have people from all across, ex-CIA guys, FBI guys, and Australian intelligence, or the Army intelligence guys. Technology-wise, I think a lot is overrated and underused. But at the same time, there is a definite need of security. There's a definite need of systems. We as security heads need to convince our CEOs to do the right thing, but we have to talk their language. We have to talk balance sheet, we have to talk in business terms. We can't just tell them that there is a threat, there's a security threat. They won't understand the security threat, but they would definitely understand, if there is a brand issue, if they'll get bad media, if they would get losses in terms of financial terms. So I think that is where, as security heads, we need to present in the boardroom the stuff they want to hear, and not stuff what we want to present actually. So that's where the difference is, I think.
Comprehensive. Mr. Sivakumar, you haven't yet really given us your wisdom.
Maruf, I think, I take it on from your introductory speech, and I totally agree with you that if a good security system has to be in place, it starts with risk management. And there are things which technology can resolve, there are things which technology cannot resolve. And in my opinion, technology is second line of defense and not the first line of defense. Second thing, you spoke about Taj. Taj bounced back within a year's time to get back to where they were. And the reason for this was just not, Tata's did not, compromise on technology for, when they were attacked. They had the best of technologies, I suppose. But I think, they invested very heavily on training and building an ethos in their employees. And I don't think, in many organizations, probably, I would say that even including my organization, we don't spend that much time with our employees, with our security staff, to build in those values. If these values are coming, I did this program with Harvard Business School in Mumbai last year, and we went through this case study. And the kind of, that 18 months is what they take to put a person on the floor. But how many hospitals or how many industries today are willing to put in that kind of training efforts and then get somebody on the floor? So that's the second thing that I wanted to kind of point out. And for a hospital, I mean, for the terrorists or people who want to attack, it doesn't really give them the mileage. Probably they lose sympathy. Today, they get more sympathy by attacking, let's say, a commercial establishment because they think that they made a big kill. But so that's a natural protection for us. But I don't think we can live with that luxury for a very, very long time because things are changing. The important thing is that for us, more than a bomb, the food that the patient can take inside or the patient attendants can take inside can be a very, very potential problem because there's a source of infection and it can infect people. So from a healthcare, the other thing which the hotels don't have and probably other industries don't have is that we get people from various tiers of society, from the economically weaker, backward sections to people who come from abroad, who can afford, who can probably afford many things which poor cannot even think of. So the challenges are very, very kind of different, and we kind of need to balance out. And for the CSOs, the Chief Security Officers, my suggestion is that please do finance and then become a CSO. Yeah, I mean, even if you are in the military and if your background is something else, I moved from, I kind of still hold, I hold the position of head of finance as well as I also head the operations in my hospital. And I think, it helps me a lot in kind of justifying certain decisions, the investments, that we make. So I would strongly recommend that, the CSOs should also go through a crash course in finance and they can talk the finance language if they have problems getting the budget allocated.
But one quick one for you. In hospitals, as a rule, yours and others, do you carry out any emergency response drills, or you are just too stressed with dealing with emergencies as they drive you into your hospital to bother about emergency response drills?
We have very extensive drills that happen from time to time, and quite regularly. In fact, we are. There are various codes, code red, code purple, code. Various kinds of codes are there for various types of emergencies, and these drills are carried out several times during a month. But what really happens is, what is in a real situation, there is panic. But in a drill, the drill is, people know it's a drill. So you really don't know until it's going to strike you. So that's, in fact, as recent as yesterday night, we had a patient, who had kind of, just taken a stroll because he wanted fresh air. So, he kind of beat the complete system and then, he kind of, strolled. He was perfectly within the perimeters of the hospital, but, he had taken a stroll. So, this, people can beat, whatever systems you can build in, people can beat. So, same thing, you can do as many drills as you want, but at the end of the day, when there is an emergency, how well you're going to respond is the big challenge.
Right. We'll open it up to the audience. Any questions, and you can ask specifically whoever you want them to answer. Yes, sir.
I'm Commander Sudhir, and I represent security industry from with my experience of 9 years in this industry. I would like to just make a comment because you are all from security fraternity and taking care of different sectors. All the three, like retail, hospitality, and hospitals, healthcare, all are having different challenges. And as said, that if you want to show the ROI to your CEOs, the first of all is that the risk analysis audit is to be carried out in strict and thoroughly, very comprehensive, so that you drive a mix of systems and man-guarding security as an integrated security solution. Once you draw the integrated security design for your all three, like I can speak for retail separately, hotel separately, and for the healthcare separately. Once you do that, so you will be having an optimum design. Once you are having an optimum design, you can show the KPIs for each post, and same way you can show the ROI for your systems which you are putting in. Now, as I'll go with Shakil, like every industry, every segment has challenges. Then accordingly you look for your systems and you look for your designs. And the onus is on security industry also, that we have been able to provide you so far that solution where your CEOs are compelled to think that security is an essential part of your business. And you have to show in terms of quantified risk audit that this much can happen. This is the losses, this is the financial cost if that incident happens. I'm sure if you do even this exercise tomorrow, and secondly, like retail sector, if you are having 600 stores pan-India, every store has got a different risk profile, and you have to meet it in quantification that what right mix of systems and man-guarding you have to have. With my experience of near about 115 security comprehensive risk analysis audit which I have carried out in different segments world over, I have found 64% are putting systems in excess, which was not desired. And near about 18 to 20% was in right mix, and equal was that it was underdone. Thank you.
Right. So there was the question that was stated. Right. Any other questions, please?
Comments, I would just.
Okay, good, fine. Because I think other than the panel, we have a lot of experience here in this room. So anybody else wants to share their experience, we're quite happy to. Yes, please go ahead, shoot. Mike, please.
I've been speaking as a policeman, and organized business faces threat not only from terrorist organizations. I mean, that is something that is a little far-fetched. I mean, you can have the threat is from first from crime. Crime could be impromptu, petty, organized, and then of course mafia. If your bottom line are going to be affected, it is going to be affected by organized and mafia. That kind of crime. Again, your transportation routes have to be protected. The security installation has to be protected from violent agitations. I mean, your installations have to be protected from violent agitations. And in a scenario in North India, especially from left-wing sponsored violent agitations. Financial security, you have to go in for security against frauds. Again, cyber security has to be a part of it. So the security actually has to be built into your system. Your bottom line will be nowhere without security. I mean, you just cannot count bottom lines without security, because if you are under attack from these the threats that I have tried to list, this is in no way an exhaustive list, the bottom line would just not exist. Security, I have got a feeling that security is not being viewed in its overall perspective, and that is why this talk about bottom line is coming. This was just a thought. If somebody would like to respond to it, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I think what you said is very, very important and absolutely to the point. With globalization and with outsourcing, now what has happened is that a lot of these functions are outsourced. So there is a problem of integration, not just with the security and, like you had said, with the state government machinery involved in security, but also integration within the company itself. So when we're talking of financial security, when we're talking of IT security and all that, it's not just the responsibility of a man who's wearing a uniform. Security is a cultural issue. Everyone is responsible for security. But when we are talking of accountability, yes, you can make a group who is specifically meant for that accountable. But if as an employee I am in the company and I suspect something, it should not be that security will see this. I should stop the man and say, who are you? Where are you going? What do you want? It is a cultural issue. It is an integration issue. The entire system of security awareness has to be understood by everyone in the company. You cannot say that just a guard at the gate or the CSO is responsible and will take care of this. You have to have a hand in that. And when I am talking of outsourcing, sir, your point, if I have hired a security agency, the person who is heading that security agency is also responsible to give me the audit reports. It's not that he is giving me 200 men and say, okay, my job is done and I will take my 8% and that's it. No, his job has to go beyond that. So when we are talking of integration, it is also integration of what is his study, what are his feedbacks, how is he training his men, how is he investing. He is not supposed to look at his commission itself. So there are these integration issues, and absolutely what you said, sir, is very, very valid, that these problems will be there, and everyone who is an organization is responsible for security.
Suman.
Go
ahead.
Thank you. Actually, to your point, we cut out the GAN part, sir, so I did not mention all those things. I just want to briefly mention what I do as the Regional Director for Security in Pfizer. And I think most of the CSOs definitely have all this in their ambit. In the security functions, it starts from business continuity management systems to crisis management response, employee protection, strategic planning, brand protection, anti-counterfeiting piece, asset protection, EHS mainly as a part of the crisis management, fraud, sustainability, supply chain security, industrial relations complete. I just handled the whole gamut of things. You must have read about the Pfizer lockout in Mumbai, the plant that we shut down. The supply chain diversion issues. So it is a gamut of all these things that we do have and we play a major role. Some of the pieces have been outsourced to technology partners and other partners. They help us out with this, like travel risk advisory to any part of this world. We have a global operations center which watches every single incident on this globe. In New York, they're 24/7 operational. I get to know what happens in India, in Mumbai, before actually I read the newspapers or I get onto the news. I have it on my BlackBerry and on my email. So that's how we respond to these things. And coming to your question about risk assessment, that was, we do have a very comprehensive business impact analysis before we get on to the business continuity management part. We do a business impact analysis based on all the threats conceivable that we think are pertinent to Pfizer and that we would get affected by it. And then it is given a monetary value when you have the RTOs and the recovery time objective and the point objectives. I don't want to get into that, but we do have all those figured out. We have the number of hours that if the business shuts down due to any reason whatsoever, there may be a demonstration outside the gate. Productivity is hampered, so we give a value to that, and that's how we arrive at what security measures should be taken to mitigate that risk. So I hope that's it.
One of the things that has emerged with the Al-Shabaab attack in Nairobi is that, very clearly on the terrorists' radar screen and the agenda, it's shifting. I remember reading years ago, one of the thumb rules that the Israelis follow, and they've been victims of terror pretty much for years, is that they also build in their planning the basic understanding that a type of target that has been attacked once is unlikely to be attacked by the same people again. Because they know that there will be a certain element of protection built in that. I mean, for instance, our hotels have gone into an overdrive in security, and others are waiting to get hit before they go into an overdrive. It almost gives the message out in the market like that. So the fact is that PPP, prepare, perceive, preempt, so that you can then prevent. So you have to go into a more detailed assessment and analysis. One of the things that a security expert abroad told me was that if your building, say you are the head of security of an IT company, classically I once went to give a talk at Oracle in Bangalore. Shelly was with me there. And one of the things that emerged was that that building of theirs on the street in Bangalore, and I don't know Bangalore well enough, but didn't have immediately high-profile companies right and left of it. But it was important not just to protect that building, but also assist with the protection of the next two buildings on either side, so that you automatically create a second layer or a buffer. Do any of you adopt that principle?
Yes, sir, we do. Because we follow a very structured approach for handling different types of disasters. Those who are from healthcare industry, they would know, right from the individual disaster to the external disaster which is happening in the community, in form of earthquake injury, big fire, major road, rail, traffic accidents, from where you're getting lots and lots of patients in your casualty department. So those levels of planning are done. So when we talk of external disaster which is happening, let's say in the next building or in Gurgaon, next to our facility, we have the city center metro railway station. Let's say there's a bomb explosion at metro railway station. So eventually, we are next door neighbor, Max, we are going to get patients. And not 1, 2 or 5 or 10, maybe 100 or 200. So we have done provision for that in terms of external disaster management framework. We do drills for that. Recently we had a drill on last Sunday only. And also we have engaged neighboring hospitals and buildings. So in our case, it is Taj and nearby Info with whom we have security, expertise sharing, and in case of internal disaster in our facility, we can always shift our casualty to their facility. Also, they can do the same in case their building is hit by some internal or external disaster. So we do have, most of the hospitals who are NABH compliant, they need to have this arrangement.
A question now to all of you, and if any of you have a model that you can suggest to the others, that it's always, I mean, it's more and more becoming clear that you need some kind of an armed protection at your gates other than just unarmed protection, however much of a bouncer the guy looks like. Okay. So, how do you overcome that shortage, which is an essential shortage? I know for a fact, I've seen it in Bangalore again, that Infosys pays a certain amount to CISF per month to give them that armed protection. Now, there is that IT city in Bangalore, which has a whole lot of IT companies. The big ones can afford it, the small ones can't. But the big ones, which would be more obvious target, because at the end of the day, as it's often been said, that terrorists look for two things in an attack: a big high-profile target and how soon media will cover it. Right? So, if you're not a big high-profile target, I think you have a pretty good chance of surviving unless you're in the collateral damage area. But if you are a big high-profile target, and we've got some two big hospital heads of security here, whereas Pfizer has branches all over, but these are the big ones, Fortis there and Apollo there. I mean, have you ever considered armed security?
Yes, initially we had a couple of, not terrorist attack, but the attack on the locality where people tried doing vandalism in our facility. So we, as a deterrent, we had gunmen with double barrel, as well as people in plain cloth, safaris, having pistols, small arms, patrolling the facility around the clock.
Wait, you get those double barrel shikar weapons?
I mean, you can't help it, sir. Until you have them, and they are ineffective. They are ineffective. But having them, changes the perception that, oh yes, they have armed gun. Because if you show the weapon, you are the first one to be killed. You also know that, you believe that. But other than this, I would like to add here that I don't know how much the risk of terrorist attack or armed intrusion exists for my facility. But I know the people from nearby villages, Nathupu, Vajirabad and all that, can always come with a patient who is almost about to die, grab the collar of my doctor and say, if the patient dies, I'm going to shoot you. In those sort of situations, we always follow protocol rules. And believe me, we had one on 15th of August when people were celebrating Independence Day. We were actually being chased, and we were chasing people who were creating vandalism in our facility from Nathupu village. And there was a local corporator involved. It just came to my mind, and then I thought that we should also use paper spray, stun gun. which are legally available, and you don't require specific licensing for them. As kind of taser, which doesn't have the wire, but yes, in the close proximity, if you apply it, the person gets a shock of around 2 lakh to 5 lakh volt, and he is immobilized for 15 minutes. If he is a young man, of course, if he is violent and young man, nothing will happen to him. It is medically proven. So perhaps you can think of using it. And we have procured one. I had shown it to my manager, and they happily said, well, we should have it. We don't want our honorary JCOs and your young security officer to be assaulted by these hooligans. And the assault happened in presence of police. Those, who are from police.
What about Apollo?
We have a couple of armed guards basically for protection of cash, because a lot of business gets transacted in cash, so we have armed guard protection for the cashier. But otherwise, it's more a deterrent. Even the guy who's standing there is more a deterrent other than. I don't think if there's an emergency, he can pull out his gun and shoot people. I don't think he will do that. So, but it's a classic dilemma. We healthcare facilities are to provide treatment for problems. Not. So to that is a classic dilemma. Are you going to overdo it and then make it really look pretty imposing? So it's a dilemma that we face.
Right.
Just to add,
Suman, you had a question. Yeah, you had something to say.
Good evening, I'm Aegis Suman Mazumdar. So I have a question to the whole panel, anybody who's interested. As a Chief Security Officer, is business continuity part of your responsibility, or is it only that during that office time period where you need to prevent some mishap from happening?
I'll take that question.
24 by 365.
It is 24/7, 365 days responsibility, and only CSO is not the person responsible for BCP. Right from the finance to the IT to the head of material to the head of administration, all are the part of the written BCP, which we have the healthcare.
Right. The reason for my asking this question was, when we talk about protection of assets, we have been to a lot of people, we've met a lot of CSOs, and one thing that we've learned over a period of time is that we want to protect the employee, but only during that period. We don't want the liability on our head when somebody is heading home or somebody is reached home. Now, this is something what we have heard from a lot of places. It's not one or two, as it's become routine actually. If somebody says 24/7 the employee is my responsibility, then it is not routine. That is surprising to us. So is this the case? Is there some policy which is there?
I think
it's more than a policy. I think it's how you build your ethics structure, how you kind of take care of your employees. And I think many hospitals, at least as far as I know, do take care of their employees 24 by 365. Unless somebody commits a suicide somewhere, and then the hospital doesn't want to get involved if it's going to be murky, that's a different thing. But otherwise, somebody meets with an accident, somebody has a problem, on the way back home. Like for example, when a nurse go back to their hostels, we send armed guards in the bus. So, they escort as far as possible. And, when somebody faced a security threat, some of the doctors, one or two faced a security threat, we posted our own guards in their residence so that, they could feel comfortable.
Okay, done. Thank you so much.
Maruf, excuse me, Maruf, may I take
Thank you very much. I know you got to go. Sorry. Thanks for giving us so much of your time. But we're just coming to but we're coming to the closing stages of our session because I'm just going to have two sets of comments, one by Mr. Shyam Mehra, former Secretary Security, and then His Excellency Mr. Shekhar Dutt, former Defence Secretary and Governor of Chhattisgarh. And then we'll ask Mr. Mehra, sir, to come and give your summing up notes.
Yeah, Maruf, I just wanted to make a suggestion. I don't know whether it's really going to be worthwhile or not, because people like me who dealt with this for a long period of time, we struggle in our minds to balance various facets, and we tend to get lost in a maze. So, having been the regulator at one point of time for aviation security, I'll begin with that. Let me tell you that aviation security sets the gold standard. What Pfizer is doing is, in fact, mutatis mutandis, they are implementing the basics of the gold standard, adjusted and modified to their standard, to their requirements. That is what they are doing. So, aviation security, for example, being a very, very high threat risk area, has a combination of policing, which is a very wide countrywide architecture, intelligence operations, specialist forces intervention, which you can't have, combined with another very compelling document, which is listed in the Chicago Convention of 1944. And this is Annexure 17 to the convention, which deals with every aspect of security. And then there is a compendium called Book 8252 or something of that sort, which lays down the entire security matrices from the perimeter right down to the checkpoints, even how frisking is to be done. So you can't have that. You can't have that. But some people in the United States, some industries, have followed a particular methodology which might serve your interest, because you will be able to bring industry-wise pressure. And I'll just ask Pfizer later on whether they follow industry-wide standards or is it their own company standard? So it's your company standard?
It's company standard. We have an MSR, which is worldwide.
Okay, I got it. Now see, so I'm reading to that. Now we had this very interesting thing when...
So may I just submit because of time?
No, 1 second only, I'm just when we were abroad, Maruf and I, we met some people who were holding these NFL games. And you know, each stadia at that point of time has thousands and thousands of people inside, maybe in the range of 50. But you know, the NFL had got together and laid down their own standards, best practices, training standards, deployment standards, and the American police only plays a subsidiary role. So why can't you lay down industry standards, for example, for hotels, and then follow them to your requirement? And that will include your, pull your CEOs also into the ambit, you know, and bring pressure on them to be able to implement industry-wide standards specific to your own needs.
Is that your summing up, or we will have another summing up? I can't let you get away, sir. No, sir.
I think
your thoughts, because then we wrap the session, then we have a presentation by Suman, and after that we'll have Mr. Mehra giving the whole conference for summing up.
I think many aspects have been sort of taken care of. And the gentleman sitting next to Mr. Mehra was a police officer. I think he classified the different dimensions. I think one aspect which a person or an organization dealing with security or a subset of security within a large organization should also sort of reckon is the fire hazards. And fire hazards, different kind of fire hazards, accident, man-made, and as a byproduct of an activity. And should have, firstly, a complete risk assessment of what will happen. Then if fire takes place, then how do you reach at many places you will find, and especially in industrial townships, you will find that even some of the fire tenders can't move in. So what happens? I mean, even if there is a will, you are completely denied to respond. So should there be an overkill and prevent this kind of a situation? And every organization must sort of prepare for a fire evacuation. It brings me to another sector, and that is evacuation. If a disaster happens, after that, how early and how safely can you evacuate people? Mr. Mehra was talking about this, the assessment of stadiums. Now, there is a
requirement that should anything happen, how many minutes would it take for the entire people of the stadium to be evacuated? Has the stadium been designed to ensure that maybe within 5 minutes everybody can get out? Or if not, should there be, reworking done? Likewise within a factory. If there is a bomb blast or if there is something, and especially if the factory is dealing with hazardous material, how early can you evacuate? And how early can you sort of bring in relief people? Now those kind of drills are far more important in the case of the management to ensure that they are secure than the eventuality of having an accident. So perhaps I think it's a matter of an exercise of mind taking place and seeing all kinds of security challenges which this particular industry or a particular organization or a particular group of people can face.
I think so they are very wise words. Both Mr. Mehra and Mr. Shekhar Dutt are very senior practitioners of security. So I don't think I'm anybody after that to put in my 2 bits worth. And on that happy note, I'd like to thank all those who contributed to this session. Please give them a good hand. Thank you very much. We had, despite a relatively thin audience, I think we're taking away some interesting lessons. May I also now invite Major Suman Majumdar, who is promoting a particular product called iWatch. iWatch is a cell phone based safety application. Some of you must need to see it to see if it can be implemented in your companies. Very easy to observe, very effective tool for providing security, especially to women. And I think Suman will now be able to, through a map and presentation, be able to explain in very crisp terms, and he's done a good job doing this presentation all over the country and abroad. I think you will find it very attractive. It's a worthwhile investment. At a very minimal cost, you can make the lives of your employees far more secure. Thank you very much.